Every child should be taken seriously. Jesper Juhl, a renowned Danish family therapist and writer, author of the book Your Competent Child, lays great stress upon this statement. As to his opinion, it is the base of upbringing a child. The child is learning about himself, his family, and the world as he is living all from birth. Even a young child is capable of empathy and taking responsibility for himself. A child's reaction to occurrences and acting of others is important at every time, and it should be understood as a precious return information to the adult. Upraising a child is no longer a one-way street with wisdom transferred from a parent to his child, but also a mutual personal growth and development process.
Welcome back to Studio 12. We are once again joined by Jesper Juhl. Jesper, thank you for joining us. A great deal of your activity concentrates on child rearing. One of your important messages is that a child has been a proper human being since birth and that he or she does not need various methods of upbringing in order to become one. You talk of the competent child. Could you explain that notion?
I chose the term competent child simply to distance myself from the traditional developmental psychology, which has since also been proven wrong, so to speak. But that a child is competent means that we can take the reactions of the child seriously. They are not hysterical, they are not irrational. They are very meaningful feedback to us as adults. And I think that's the most important competence. It doesn't mean that children know everything better. It doesn't mean that they can live without parents. It simply means that they should be taken serious as individual human beings, and they have all the qualities sorry, they have all the qualities emotionally and so on as adults have. They don't have experience.
Mm-hmm. What kind of role does equality play, and how does it affect the child's development?
I think equality is out of the question when it comes to the relationship between adults and children, because adults have so much more power, directly, indirectly, financially, physically, psychologically, in every sense. What I am talking about is a relationship of equal dignity, meaning that the child should be included in the family, not only emotionally, but also his reactions later, his ideas, his dreams, his goals should be taken seriously. And taking another person seriously does not always mean to agree with that person. It doesn't always mean that this is also possible. It just means that we have to get away from this old tradition and say, you know, what do you know? And you're just a child, and you know that's impossible, and that will have to wait till you grow up, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of this vocabulary that we have had for 200 years as parents that we need to get rid of.
The upbringing can either support or demolish the child's integrity. In this, parents can have doubts as to how their treatments affects the child and his or her integrity.
That is true, and that is, the biggest question of them all in these years is the question of how do we as adults, parents, teachers, pedagogues, how do we provide the leadership that we know every child needs in such a way that we do not violate the integrity of the child. We know very important parts of that answer, but I don't think we know the answer still. It has never been tried before in the history of the world, and we are slowly recognizing. We should have been able to learn from the relationship between adults, but as you know, even the love relationship between men and women have been of a nature where both parties were often violated. Especially women, of course, have experienced that their integrity was not even being considered. And the same has been the tradition with children. So we are about to learn something very, very new.
Children are generally ready to cooperate. In what way do they cooperate, and how does this show in their manner of expression?
I have used the term cooperate instead of the old-fashioned word adapt. The fact is that the first way children cooperate with their parents is that they copy them. This is something that every parent can experience. You know, if you make a certain facial expressions to a child, they will copy it. If you push a ball, they will push it back, and so on. But they also do cooperate with our behavior. Not only, unfortunately, the parts of our behavior that we are aware of, but also the behavior that we are not aware of. You can say it very simply. You can say that children want nothing more than making their parents happy. And if they do not succeed, it always means that the parents have to change. That the parents are doing something that is preventing the child from doing the right thing, so to speak.
How do we develop self-esteem in a child?
Well, self-esteem comes from two sources mainly. One is that an experience in the child that I am valuable to my parents, that I'm not, a disturbance or a minus to their lives or just hard work, but I'm actually enriching their lives. That is the basis for self-esteem in all of us. That's why most of us have so little. The other thing is that self-esteem has to do with how much do I know about myself. And our tradition of raising children is not to encourage them to know more about themselves, but to know more about us. So as a parent, what you can do is that you can simply be interested. You can be curious and say, my God, you're doing like this. You know why? or what are you thinking that makes you do this? And that is very helpful for the child. Then, of course, it depends on how do you as a mother react to these thoughts or emotions. Because if you make them wrong, then of course the child trusts you and will come to the conclusion that whatever I am wrong. And then you have this low self-esteem, which is characterized usually by a lot of bad conscience, feeling guilty, feeling that, I'm really nothing, and hopefully or someday somebody will find out, that it's just a big bluff, all of it, or whatever it is. So, and this low self-esteem is responsible for a lot of trouble, a lot of pain in people and between people. So I'm very happy that it is now on the agenda, so to speak, that parents and pedagogues are really seriously considering how can we not destroy self-esteem in children, because you cannot give it to them, but you can make it possible for the self-esteem to develop in a healthy way.
You say the children know what they want, but not what they need. How can we differentiate between a child expressing a wish and an actual need?
Well, the needs of children have not changed. They're simple. They need love, they need security, they need food, they need shelter, they need warmth, they need clothes, and that's what they need. So your child needs food, it needs nutrition. It might want to go to McDonald's to get it, but that's a wish, it's not a need. Then you can argue, well, the child can argue, all my friends are going to McDonald's. So it might be like a social need, but it's not a need. We all wish to have, our own clothes. We enjoy getting new clothes, but you can survive easily with secondhand. So this is what it is. So the children need parents who know the difference between wishes, dreams, what do I want. And there's nothing wrong with children wanting things. There's also nothing wrong in giving children what they want, if you do it for the right reason. If you do it to avoid conflict, if you do it to be liked by the child, then you will get in trouble. But if you do it out of the goodness of your heart or your pocket or whatever it is, it's fine, it's no problem.
And how does the realization of these wishes and needs, or lack thereof, affects on child?
I think the same way as the values of parents always do. It gives the children a foundation. It gives them something to stand on when they get into puberty, and then of course also something to argue with and rebel against. But do not let the children set the standard in the family. The standard has to be set by the parents.
How does a child experience violence? What are the consequences of violence, and how do these consequences show later in life?
On an emotional level, children experience violence as something is wrong with me. I'm a bad person. On a biological level, it alters the development of their brain, so that when children are exposed to irrational violence, that just comes out of the blue, or comes because now mother is frustrated or father is angry or something, then what happens in the brain is that instead of developing skills, coping skills for conflicts, the child will slowly start reacting from what we call the reptile brain, which is the most primitive part of the brain. And you can see that very clearly. You can see a lot of adults that are reacting very primitively when they get into conflict, divorce for instance, and so on. You can see that they are, 1 minute they are polite, intelligent, well-educated, sensible people, and the next minute they're like animals. And this comes from violence, and a false or wrong development of the brain simply.
In upbringing, we often use the term method of intervention. Why is this kind of approach more understandable to us, and how it is to be surpassed?
I think a method, first of all, it's a new concept. It's like, I don't know, 25, 30 years old maybe, that there is a certain method. The problem with it is that you reduce your child to being an object, a thing that you as a parent can manipulate with as much as you want and how you want, which I think is not only bad for the child that we know, but it is also bad for the relationship between parents and children. I do understand, however, that parents that are really, they feel lost in their role as parents, that they can find some kind of security. The problem with all the methods we know is that their objective is to make children behave in the way we think they should, which is very different from letting your children develop the way they are. So of course, if you have spent the first 10, 12 years of your childhood being the kind of person that your parents wanted, then you will get in big difficulty as a young person, an adult person, because you will not know who you are. And you will either rebel against any authority, or you will need an authority in your life. You will need, as a young woman, you will need some kind of a man who is, telling you what to do and what not to do. It might not be comfortable, but it is what my parents did. So it must be love in some way. So it creates all kinds of trouble. Most methods that we know of function for about 6, 7, 8 months, and then they stop. Because implementing a method between people who love each other is somehow wrong. I mean, imagine that this was going to take place between two adults. My wife has been angry with me, for the last 3 months, and lately she also doesn't want to have sex with me. Can you give me some kind of method, that can make her willing? I mean, it's ridiculous when we think about it. But of course, it is not ridiculous if you don't know or don't want to know that children are real human beings.
How do children tell us that they are old enough to take responsibility and no longer need upbringing? Why can parents overlook these signs?
I think one of the most important jobs for parents is that when we do things, when we try to educate, when we try to bring up our child, I think we need to ask ourselves, am I doing this because I really sincerely believe it is good for my child? Or am I doing this to take care of my own image or self-image as a parent? I think most of us will find that 80% of what we're doing is something we're doing for ourselves. That's okay. But as long as we are convinced that it is the best for the child, it makes us blind and deaf. So we cannot appreciate, we cannot take and integrate the feedback that our children are giving us. When it comes to responsibility, children will tell their parents. Either they will stop listening, or they will say, don't tell me what to do. Or they will ask when they're smaller, they will say, how come that you decide that? Why can I not decide that? And that is a good sign for parents then to start thinking and say, okay, maybe we should leave more to him. And it can be simple things, the way he dresses, the way he cuts his hair, the way he takes care of his homework, whatever it is. But basically, what you can know is that it is the last minute when there is what I call destructive conflicts between parents and child. A destructive conflict is a conflict that repeats itself more and more often over the same subject, and where the tone from both sides become more and more negative. Then parents can know, okay, now it's time. Now we have been taking too much responsibility for the wrong thing. Now we need to consider to let go and correct this.
To end this interview, is there a message or thought that you could share with future and current parents on how to raise their children?
Well, the short version is, try not to see your children as projects that has to succeed. Try to enjoy them. Try to make note of how they enrich your lives. And as long as you are not crazy or violent all the time, you can believe that you're a good enough parent. Many parents today are actually or actively seeking for information and inspiration, which is what Family Lab is for and my books are for. But it is very important to say that I could never write a book about how to raise children, because I have no idea. There are so many hundreds of millions of ways of doing that are successful that I don't think anybody knows that. I know what to do when parents feel that they're not succeeding. That's my speciality, so to speak. But how to do it, find your own way, and most importantly, take the feedback from your child seriously and reflect with your partner and say, what are we doing? How can we do it? I learned a very important thing with my son and my wife, that when he was doing things that we didn't really like or thought was completely wrong or terrible, we would make a note in our calendars 6 months in the future and then do nothing. And if 6 months after it was still a problem, we would do something. It never was. So you have to make yourself make yourself a little calm sometimes. And first of all, you have to remember that the best thing you can give your child is to take good care of your marriage. That's what they need the most, but they never ask for it.
Jesper, thank you very much for your insights and for taking the time to visit us.
You're very welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching.